But if you're committed to the process, if you're committed to daily action, things will happen for you. And you do have to give up some of the stuff that doesn't serve you, but you don't have to give up old you. You can still be hilarious fucking old you and also be new you. Hi, I'm Andee Scarantino, and I am a mindset coach, and I have a business called Get the Fuck Off, and I help people renegotiate limiting beliefs, break bad habits, and stop doing the shit that doesn't serve them anymore. I started this, well, actually, I started my own personal journey in 2018. Prior to that, I had been stuck for a really long time working in a job that I hated. I had a lot of education, but somehow I just didn't have the tools in my toolbox to move forward. And I kind of went down a spiral of not being able to change my life. And I got very overweight. I was very unhappy. I was smoking probably a pack to a pack and a half a day. I was drinking 5 to 6 nights a week until 4 o'clock in the morning. It was really, and I thought for the most part that was how I wanted my life to look. And I got into a relationship with a man, and I thought that was going to fix everything. Like, okay, I'm with a man now, so that's gonna fix it. You know, I got the love, and that so was out of alignment with who I am as a human being, and it did not end up in a good place. It ended up in January of 2018. That man and I got into an argument. We were in a long distance relationship. I was visiting him where he lived at the time, and the argument ended up with him driving me to the airport when I didn't have a flight home and just leaving me there. And I was sitting there, almost 200 pounds, a cigarette smoker. Like I was drunk out of my mind. The TSA wasn't even there yet. And I was sitting on this bench in the airport in Columbus, Ohio, with no flight back to New York, because that's where I live. I live in New York City. And I thought, I fucking have to do something. Like I am the furthest away from where I want to be in my life. I remember people, the TSA ended up arriving at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And by then I had bought a flight on skip leg to get back home. And I remember this woman looking at me as I was sitting, you could tell that I was crying the entire night, and asking me if I was okay, and me getting angry at her, getting angry at myself. And I was like, all right, that's it. Like, this is it. There are strangers that are looking at me and seeing this. And like, how long is this going to go on? So I came back home, and a week later, I joined an online community, an online wellness community called the Whole Life Challenge. And that was really the first step. The first step was getting my body to a place where I needed it to be. I was not eating very healthy. So it was about getting my diet under control. The Whole Life Challenge focuses on 7 daily habits. So I learned very basic foundations of how to take care of myself from that, getting enough sleep, hydrating properly, those things. But that was just kind of the beginning. That was the beginning. I soon after that quit smoking. I started running marathons. And I'm not talking about like 5Ks. I mean marathons. I actual 26.2 mile races. I had started running while I was a cigarette smoker. And I guess what they don't tell you about that is if you start running as a smoker, once your body actually figures out how to consume oxygen and distribute it, and your circulation isn't compromised, you become pretty good at it. So I started doing that. But even though I had really great success with breaking bad habits, I've actually stopped drinking since that time. That was 3 years ago. I'm sorry, that was 4 years ago. 3 years ago. We're in 2021. 3.5. Let's compromise. Ever since then, I still had trouble. I had trouble getting unstuck in a lot of other areas. So I asked for help. And from asking for help through various people that I asked for help, I learned the science of what makes a human get stuck and how the stories that you tell yourself are creating your reality, and how I was living in complete victim consciousness about everything. Like, why was I working at a chain restaurant in Times Square for 12 years when I have a master's degree from an Ivy League school? Like, why was that my reality. And it was because I had told myself that. So I spent, in the beginning of COVID, I was still pretty stuck. I mean, I already had the foundations for Get the Fuck Off in place. I had this idea that I wanted to help people, primarily women, but I'm not opposed to working with men. I had the idea that I wanted to help women get unstuck in their lives. I wanted to help women renegotiate their ideas about their bodies. I wanted to help people figure out ways that they could stop doing the shit that they felt was having power over them. Because I felt a lot of times that different, like my smoking and my drinking, like that, those were controlling me at different times. But I didn't really so at first it was like, okay, this is going to be an idea about helping people stop drinking and stop smoking. And my tagline, which still is, get off the smokes, get off the sauce, get off your ass. I mean, that was the big idea. But it was the beginning of COVID. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe this isn't the best time. I mean, even though it in all actuality was the best time, like that was the best time that people should have been doing that. But the thing is, people have to be ready to hear something. And I've learned in my years of tending bar that when you're talking to someone, they have to be able to receive the information. So I used the pandemic to educate myself on actually how to do this, because having an idea is one thing, being able to execute is a completely different thing. And through the process of building my business, I actually learned where my limiting beliefs were in so many areas, in areas such as how I actually viewed money. I grew up, I would say lower middle class to middle class, and just learning all of my ideas around that. And every time I would learn of a new limiting belief that I had, it helped me develop a strategy to help somebody else with that limiting belief. So I've been working with clients since November of 2020. It's been wonderful. I'm right now entering my third round of beta testers. I've been working with people for 8 weeks at a time. So at first I didn't have any kind of structure in place. I was just sort of working with people informally, meeting people here and there. And then following that, I started to develop what a mindset coaching program. I wanted there to be an actual strategy for this program and how I can take people through it from A to B to C. Because one of the things that I always say is that there is no teleportation system in the road to A to B. But you can walk quickly. Like you can walk very quickly through a series of micro steps. So I did 2 rounds, and this is my third round that I'm starting. And then following that, I'm only going to be working with clients for 3, 6, or 9 months at a time, because I really believe that that's how people can get the most value out of what I'm doing. But I'm still in a learning stage. While I know a lot, I learn from every person I work with. And so that's where I'm at right now. And it's great. It's really, really great.
That's so inspiring. I love that. And you mentioned before this idea of that someone can't really hear what you're saying if they're not ready to listen. But do you think that they need, or that people need that moment, like you had at the airport, just to think, oh, this isn't what I want, to then pursue something that they do want? Or can that come out of something entirely positive as well?
I would love to say that they don't need to have that moment. From what I've seen, most people have to have that moment. It really sucks that you have to have the moment. It's like this is part of the work, right? Because what I want to do, I have a podcast called the Get the Fuck Off podcast, and in one of my early episodes, second episode, it was called Eliminating the Rock Bottom. Like, how bad does it have to get? Like, how bad do you really have to hit a rock bottom to make a change? And I would love to my goal in my work is to get people to want to shift before that moment happens, because I think that it's so valuable, and you can start making small steps today. So everything that I talk about is, it doesn't have to get that bad. We can change it today. We can shift today. But a lot of times when things are just okay, people are just okay. So they're just okay kind of going along, and they're just okay with accepting, because they believe that this is just how life is. Life is just okay. And they don't really have that catalyst to make that major change. Everybody that I know, and that's why the pandemic was really transformative for a lot of people, as a lot of people went, okay, like I need to do something. And another thing about that I've learned through my own studies, I mean, I've done a lot of reading. I've read a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza. Is about how your brain is taking over. Every morning when you wake up, your brain is on autopilot. You're running a series of programs. And very oftentimes, you're not really in control. Your brain does what it does to keep you alive. So the program just reruns every single day. And what the pandemic did was it gave people just this absence of it was a halt. Everything that people knew just stopped. And so people had the space then. This is why people exercise mindfulness. This is why now we see people leaving their jobs. This is why we see people. There was just a Wall Street Journal article that I read the other day about people just, well, I just want better. I just want different. And it's because the pandemic gave that opportunity, that big opportunity for people to pause and to stop and say, okay, now I can do that. And yeah, a lot of times there has to be a catalyst. I would love to say that there doesn't have to be. And maybe this episode of the HackCess Show can be a catalyst for somebody to say, yeah, I really don't like my life as a CPA. Nothing against a CPA. I mean, I don't really like that. Maybe but I hope that people like we can start moving towards that without there having to be some, big moment of despair or rock bottom in your life. I hope.
And you talked about like creating your own realities. So how do you think you can, if you're in this reality, how can you identify problems that you're having, like getting outside of like your own life to observe from like another perspective and see this is a problem that I can fix, or I'm not actually happy and I'm telling myself I'm happy. How do you think you can identify this when you create your own reality?
Well, that's a great question. And a lot of times you need another person to hold up a mirror for you. I mean, that happens a lot. You need somebody. I can't say that I didn't do it without help, and I didn't do it without some people saying some tough things to me that I didn't want to hear. And one of those tough things that people said were, you're waiting for someone to come and save you, and it's not happening. Like nobody is coming to change your life for you. You need to do it. It's hard when you're in it because everything seems like it happens to you. And you seem and you feel like everything in your life is out of your control, that it is just happening to you. So I would suggest that if you are not at a place where you're willing to lay your life out for a stranger, then you need to take a pause and realize that everything that is happening to you is, this is going to sound like tough love, it's your fault. I mean, it's not really your fault. That's hard. Not everything that happens to you is your fault. There's going to be a lot of things that have happened to you in your life that are not your fault, but everything that's happening to you in your life is your responsibility. So you have to take responsibility for all of the things that have happened to you. And human beings, just in general, we're usually, a lot of us have gone through some pretty crappy situations. And I think I used to use the first 18 to 20 years of my life to blame for every single thing that ever happened to me. Well, my parents didn't have money. Well, and that was the narrative. Well, I've had to struggle for this, or I had to struggle for this. And of course, obviously looking at me, you can tell that I have inherent privileges just by looking at me. But everything was someone else's fault. Everything was, and it wasn't until I made the commitment to take the responsibility for myself that my life began to change. Like, okay, none of this was my fault. Yeah, all of these things happened to me. I was treated shitty by all of these men. I had all of these things happen. I have worked in this job for way too long. I was treated badly there. I mean, all of this, but I had to take responsibility for it. I had to be the one that committed every day to making the change. And that's not necessarily easy to do. And I think everybody says, okay, well, I'm in this situation and it's really awful, but tomorrow I want to be, I'll use an example. A good friend of mine has used the time in the pandemic to go from working at the same job that I was at to becoming an entertainment personality. And now he's contracted by the Dip to host a podcast on, pop culture. And he did it through a series of small steps. And everything that you do can be done through a series of small steps. Everything that you want to create is a series of small steps. And a lot of that has to do with just starting to build the basement of the house first. And just, okay, like, let's take care of the very basic things and then go from there.
Yeah, I think I like the way that like just using the word responsibility, like it's like COVID. You can't take, like, it happens, but that's how you see like restaurants emerging from that and other like falling. And like, I don't know, like restaurants went and did like amazing delivery systems and creating menus and all that with locals, and like they created amazing stuff, and other just like left life and happens, and and it sucks. So I think you have to take responsibility and like, I don't know, like take control,
You do.
So
You do, absolutely.
So how do you set your goals? Do you, I don't know, do you work with long time goals, or you talked about creating small steps? How do you set that?
That's a great question. I do have long-term goals, but I think long-term goals are, I have long-term goals, but usually those are more useless than you think. You have to see yourself as the person that you want to be before you are that person. That's common knowledge in, I think, the coaching space, is that you have to visualize yourself as what you want to be before you are that. And then, through that visualization, the path will kind of unfold for you. And a lot of people will think that that's a load of shit, but it's really not. It's really not. You have to believe it. But for me, process goals are super important. And it's one thing to say, like, okay, like I feel like I'm using that voice a lot when I'm trying to imitate my ideal client. but this is how I was, and you hear it from people all the time. So I'm one of those people that lost a ton of weight and I haven't, gained it back. And the reason for that is because I changed my idea about how I thought about a lot of things. But you'll hear this a lot of time. Weight loss is an example I'm going to use. Somebody will say, I want to lose 60 pounds. Great. All well and good. You want to lose 60 pounds. Amazing. But that doesn't say anything. Like that's way off on the horizon. And as we all know, in the coaching world, things happen in the present moment. So process goals are so much more important to me than long-term goals. I have an idea of what I want, but it doesn't always look exactly how you think it's going to look. And it changes and morphs, and it will look kind of like you wanted it to look, but there's going to be a lot of aspects that are different. So if you want, like, let's say, to lose 60 pounds, I think that was the figure I used before, you're better off with a daily process of something that you're going to do daily, because we are what we do daily. And if you're a person that, say, like me, wants to or uses their voice to help people move forward, because I do work with clients, but I also produce a lot of content for free because I'm really passionate about what I do. And that for me involves daily work. And that involves making sure that every day I do something. And it doesn't have to be something huge, but every day I do some small action. And now here I am with you, and this is exciting. But a year ago, I wasn't podcasting at all. I wasn't really writing publicly at all. I had just started to write publicly, I think about a month or two into the pandemic. And I really wasn't using my voice. So through the using my voice and actively making sure that I did that every day, now I have a following where I'm able to inspire people. And it developed seemingly on its own, just by little small actions. So process goals really are, for me, huge, like so imperative.
And can you clarify, I mean, just for me, what are process goals exactly? Like, do you have a definition for them?
Process goals are basically what it is, that you have a process in place, that the process is what you're embracing, not so much the the end result. So I'll use running as an example, because as I told you guys, I'm a marathon runner, and I have a long-term goal of qualifying for Boston this year, because I've only been running seriously since the end of 2017. So even before, I told you guys earlier, and yeah, that's great. Like I know the time that I need to run for qualifying for Boston, but that isn't a process. So the process for me is, what do I do daily? So my process is, okay, like my weekly mileage goal right now, okay, the marathon is in October. So I want to be running about 50 miles a week and eventually end up at about 70 miles a week. And I am committed to doing that process every day. So every day I wake up and it's not, okay, I have to run a 3:35 for my age group. I want to run a 3:30. I'm not going to, that's not what's on my mind every day. What's on my mind every day is, okay, this is the weekly mileage that I want to do. So this is what I need to do on Monday to complete that process. And this is about what I need to eat every week. I need to make sure that I'm fueling, that I'm having enough protein so that I don't get injured, because if I get injured a month into training or 2 months into training, then I'm not going to achieve the long-term goal. So it's like, what am I eating every day? What am I running every day? How much am I sleeping every day? How am I balancing my life every day to make sure that that happens? And that's my process. And that's so much more important than just keeping that flashing timestamp of what I want to run in Chicago this fall. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it really does. So, and through the visualization of yourself achieving goal, but no, being the person that you want to be after you've followed these goals you've set for yourself, for these process goals, I believe, that we spoke of. Is it through that you keep the motivation even through like the long and arduous process of doing something every day?
Absolutely. And I think that's really important as well, like for my clients, because I think a lot of times my clients will get tripped up when they have a lull in what they consider to be productive. So if you're going to look at it through a lens of fitness adapts during rest, not necessarily through activity. And I learned that from one of my mentors. And his name is Andee Scarantino. He's been really influential in my life. And he taught me that, because at the time, I was completely unwilling to accept that I needed to rest. Now, let's take that to a lens of someone's life. People often will think that if they're not moving forward every day, if every single day doesn't show some sign that they are moving forward, that they're a failure. That's it. And that's just not that's not what progress looks like. Progress looks like this. And if anyone's just hearing the audio of this, I'm making what looks like a sound wave with my finger. But yeah, that's what it looks like. It doesn't look like a straight linear line from the bottom to the top. So you're going to have times where you're feeling uninspired. You're going to have times where things just aren't happening in your life. But if you're committed to the process, if you're committed to daily action, things will happen for you. If you are committed to show up every day, things are going to happen. You might not even know what it is. Like you might not even know what the next opportunity is. So just, keep in mind your long-term goal of who you want to be, but then just commit to a process, commit to the daily action. And it will keep you motivated so much more than just thinking about some arbitrary long-term result that you want to have at some point, sometime.
So like, do you have some stuff on a daily basis that you do to stay focused on these goals? Or maybe sometimes you feel like, I don't know, you feel a little bit depressed, or when you're not hitting a goal, like that can happen. How do you stay positive and, focus on the process?
I believe, and I have had this reinforced to me over the last year more times than I can count, that you get more of what you focus on. So there are things in my life that I still do that don't necessarily, how do I want to say this? I have a couple of jobs right now that are for extra money. And at the time I still need to still have those. they're not necessarily my ideal things. But before in my life, I used to focus on the negative all the time. Like, oh, okay, I gotta go to this fucking stupid job.
Mm.
And now I try to see the positive in every single situation that I'm in. Okay, I have to go to this job, but I have done a lot of networking at this job and this job. So I always try to focus on the good things that the not so ideal situations in my life present themselves. So it's not just about monetary gain, but rather just, okay, this situation isn't ideal, but here's the good thing that I get from it.
Mm.
Other than that, I am very committed to exercising every day, following all those basic foundational habits that I talked about when we first started talking about, making sure that I'm taking care of the basic, you have to take care of your body first and foremost. So making sure I take care of that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that I don't eat cookies and ice cream, but that does mean that I about 80% of the time put good things in my body, make sure I get enough sleep, make sure that I drink enough water. Like, it sounds so corny, but it's so important that every day when I wake up, I think, who am I showing up as today? What am I going to do today that is going to make me the best version of myself that I can possibly be? And today that happened to be talking to you guys. But some days it could be just sending out an email to my subscribers. What can I say? And using examples from my own life to help inspire people. And every time I focus more on what I want and who I want to be, that also helps others. And it also brings me more of what I want. So I get a lot of joy in what I do. And I make sure that the things that I'm doing are providing me joy. And I want the people that I work with to also experience that, because I don't want anyone to ever think that they're just being drug along by their lives, because you're not. You're just, the universe is kind of, this is getting a little bit spiritual, but the universe is on a lag. So you don't just do something today and see the results tomorrow. It might be a year, and that's fine, as long as you can accept it and trust the process, trust whatever you believe in, that's bigger than you. And I think we all kind of have to believe in something that's bigger than us, because if you look at the sky, you'll see something that's bigger than us. It doesn't necessarily need to be a deity. It doesn't necessarily need to be, a god of any type. But if you just can believe that something's bigger than you, things will also work out for you. And that's about as spiritual as I'll get for you guys.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to put it. And I think when you reverse engineer the process and you create these process goals, it's easier to stick to your habits and create good habits. You talked about like losing 60 pounds. I think it's when you focus on how is this person going to look like at the end, like a person minus 60 pounds is going to look, what is like this person's daily goals, daily habits, how is this person going to eat? And I think that's how it's kind of a game, you become this person every single day, and you become a better version of yourself. And I think it's way better than focusing on the goal. Like, I'm going to lose 60 pounds. I'm going to stop eating cookies. Oh my God, and
I do. But you know what else I have to tell you guys? There's another big piece of it all, and another big piece of mindset coaching and just any transformation in any person's life, is that you have to change along with your habits. So you have to believe about yourself the absolute best things. And sometimes people lump their identities into the things they do. And I'll give you a great example. As a cigarette smoker, and I'm a former smoker, but when I was a cigarette smoker and when I was drinking till 4 o'clock in the morning, several nights a week, you have an idea about what a person like that looks like. And a lot of times people really identify with these things that they've created, stories that they've created about themselves. So they have this idea, and we all kind of march and walk through our lives as this idea that we have in our minds about who we are. And a lot of times the things that you want, and again, we can go back to the losing 60 pounds, but we can also say anything. When we want something, we sometimes will have a conflict in that we believe that that's out of alignment with our identities. So if that's out of alignment with what your identity is, you need to change your identity. And that's hard for people. One of my good friends, who also served as my business coach, honestly, she and I went to undergrad together. Her name's Ash Amberjay. She told me that when she was in grad school, she was studying linguistics, that they said that that a person And forgive me if she listens to this. I hope I don't butcher the story. But she told me that a person's likelihood to adopt a new language later in life really has a lot to do with whether or not they resonate with the country that they the country of origin of that language. So if you like want to study Spanish, how much do you resonate with Latin American culture? I think, and for that's true of everything. So it's like, if you want to become a marathon runner when you are a cigarette smoker, well, how much do you resonate with that culture of running? There's a culture. And if you're the person that's standing outside of the bar smoking cigarettes, there's a culture to that too. And I've spent a lot of time in my life standing outside of buildings smoking. And if you've ever smoked cigarettes, you know there's a huge culture with people just shooting this shit outside of business, like buildings, because smokers really are the lepers of society, and they wear that as a badge of honor. Like, we're like this. This is us. And there's this common theme about people like us do things like this. And when you want to be something new, you have to sometimes break away from that. And you have to break away from people like us do things like this. And you have to really adopt the new culture of what people like, what you want to be do. And it doesn't invalidate who you were. So I, the marathon running mindset coach who is practicing mindfulness every single day and sitting, listening to deep ohms on Insight Timer, is the same fucking asshole that was smoking outside of the bar. And I still have those friends that I made smoking cigarettes outside of the bar. And I never stopped going out for cigarettes with those people after I stopped smoking, because you can be both. And people think they have to choose. You don't have to choose. You do have to adopt some of the things of the new culture that you want to move into. You do, but you don't have to give up old you. You might have to give up your limiting, you do have to give up your limiting beliefs, and you do have to give up some of the stuff that doesn't serve you, but you don't have to give up old you. You can still be hilarious fucking old you and also be new you. And the identity piece is huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah, I think like just you talked about seeing the positive in everything you do. It's a little bit like seeing like the part of the culture you want to adopt, like the marathon people and the like instead of the smoking people, and you can adopt a little bit of everything in the culture you want to grab to create the better version of yourself. Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
Andee, thanks so much. It's promo time for you now. So whatever you got going on in your life, it's your time.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So you can find me on my website, getthefuckoff.com. I'm on Instagram at _getthefuckoff or at microsteps forward. So microsteps forward is like a personal blog. And so they kind of link to each other. And I'm also on Twitter _getthefuckoff, but I have tweeted since 2008, maybe 150 times. So that's useless, but I'm also there. But definitely getthefuckoff.com. And you can find my podcast there. And my podcast, the Get the Fuck Off podcast, is also on Apple and Spotify. And I put out a new one every week on Mondays.